All right, everybody, we are live again. Dynasty Mir, Search for Uhuru. And I have the brother Omowale Africa with us today. And, today's topic is the importance of Black Americans reclaiming their African heritage. I know, brother, you're part of an organization that I know we'll get into that as we chat, that ensures that we are preserving African heritage. So, brother Omowale, go ahead, introduce yourself, let everybody know where you're from. And
peace to the chat. My name is Omowale Africa. I'm an organizer from the Philadelphia area. I've been organizing for roughly the past 13 years or so. 34 years old. I'm a father of three, husband. I pick up a check every 2 weeks from the corporate plantation here in America as a CPA. I'm the immediate past president of the international headquarters of the UNIA and ACL, located in Philadelphia. I currently serve as the treasurer for Afrocentricity International, the Philadelphia chapter. I'm the campaign manager for the African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Fund. And every once in a while, I have the opportunity to come on to YouTube and lecture on Brother George Macon's show to try to raise the consciousness of our people.
Mm-hmm. That's what's up, brother. Yeah, man. So now, are you from Nigeria?
I am not from Nigeria. I embraced the name Omowale. I embraced it in early 2017. The story went, it was around the time that I was coming out of the UNIA, making a transition in my life. A lot of things that were going on politically within the organization, and I was really just looking to kind of clear my head. And at the time, I had watched a lecture from Dr. Amamazama, who was the founder of Afrocentricity International, and the title of the lecture was the self-naming is the first act of African determination. And the name Omowale has been one that has always spoken to me because it's a name that was bestowed upon Malcolm X back in 1964 during his visit to Nigeria. The students from the Nigerian Student Association gave him the name, and it essentially means the child who has returned home. You know what I mean? So for me, returning home is symbolic in many ways. Returning home spiritually. As a born-again African, as I like to say, but really just returning to the essence of who we are and trying to encourage as many of our people to make the journey as well.
What's the importance of who we are?
What was that?
I said it was echoing on your end, but what's the importance of returning to who we are?
It's very important to exist in the world as who we are as African people. Because if we don't do that, then we'll always be existing on someone else's terms. And when we are existing on someone else's terms, I mean, I think that we've seen what that has gotten us, over the last, you can say 400 years, if you want to talk about the enslavement process, or if you want to talk about the colonization process, you can see over the last century, it's gotten us to a place where we are embracing self-mutilation, and self-hate. African people are trying to bleach their skin to look more European. We're trying to really throw off all of our Africanity in order to, assimilate into a world that is calling for our death every day.
Okay. What? Let's see here. No, we're not going to talk about that today. That I already spoke on that country. But everybody, as you enter the chat, please hit that like button. Yeah, and we spoke on this. Had a young lady on earlier with us today, and we spoke on the importance of also including our Afro-Latino and our Caribbean brothers and sisters. What's the importance of making sure they're involved and just not limiting this to just Black Americans?
Well, I think that, the Africans in America, or Black Americas, have always played, a vanguard role in the global African struggle for liberation. Are we good on my end? Are you good?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Go ahead.
So when you talk about, Black people in Latin America, what a lot of people don't know is because oftentimes when we use the term African American today, We related to Jesse Jackson giving it to us in the 80s. But back in the 60s and the late 50s, there was a significant movement of Black people in America referring to themselves as Afro-American.
Mm-hmm.
And in embracing that name, they were embracing Black people throughout the Americas, right? So South America, North America, which includes, Canada and Mexico. In fact, when Malcolm X started his organization, the Organization for Afro-American Unity, he saw it as the other half to the Organization of African Unity. And his goal with that organization was to really bring all the African people in the diaspora, right? So not just Black people in America, but Black people in the Caribbean, Black people in South America, and Black people in Canada, together under one organization, with the goal of really overthrowing, white racial domination.
Oh, wow. Wow. Let's see what we got in chat room. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Let's go ahead and dive into the organization you're part of. If you could go into details about that.
Yeah, so, Afrocentricity International is an organization that was founded back in 2011 by Dr. Molefi Kete Asante and Dr. Amma Mazama. The organization is modeled after Marcus Garvey's UNIA.
Okay.
We have 4 dimensions that we work in. So we work within economics, spirituality, intellectualism. Excuse me. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold.
Oh, no, you're fine.
So it's economics, spirituality, intellectualism, and politics. Like, those are the 4 domains that our organization operates in. And we recently, in terms of where we're located, our founders spent a significant amount of time getting us a significant presence globally. So we have a footprint pretty much on every continent right now, with the exception of Alaska. We actually have more Afrocentricity International chapters outside of America than we do here in the States. So, currently I'm playing a significant role in helping to develop the organization nationally in the United States. And a part of that was assisting to launch the African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Fund, which we just launched this past Sunday, the 25th of November.
Okay. Okay. Where do you think, I would say, Marcus Garvey dropped the ball at with the UNIA?
I don't necessarily think that that Garvey, dropped the ball. You know what I mean? And if I look at this war, that we're engaged in long term, each generation, has a role to play to forward our progress, to help us reach the end goal. And each, subsequent generation is supposed to look at how the game was played slightly before them and basically modify and adjust, to continue on the fight, so to speak. But in many ways, Garvey was successful beyond, our wildest dreams. You know what I mean? If you look at, for instance, many of the independence movements that happened on the African continent during the 50s and the 60s, many of them were influenced by Garveyism, which is one of the reasons you'll see right now on the continent today, a lot of the, so-called independent nations all have some element of red, black, and green in their flag. So I don't think I would agree with Marcus Garvey dropping the ball.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, now, didn't he have some people who infiltrated?
100%. The FBI was integrated, right? The first Black person to work for the FBI was hired to infiltrate the UNIA.
Right.
So they went through leaps and bounds to prevent Marcus Garvey from achieving a vision of a global African nation, because they saw it as a threat, and rightly so, to their colonial properties. You have to remember that from 1885 to about 1915, the European states were engaged in a protracted or prolonged war for the colonization of Africa, right? And then Garvey arrives on the scene here in the U.S. in 1916, and he's talking this Garveyism, and it's spreading like wildfire all over the world, right? So that was a threat. to their new colonial properties. So, Garvey even talks about in a letter that he wrote that as a result of Garveyism, the Europeans had to give some concessions, right? So they had to make room for African collaborators to work within the colonial administration so that they wouldn't be discontent with their situation, because Garveyism was agitating and riling up the masses. So they had to give them some jobs to calm them down.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Let's see what we got here in the chat room. Everyone, once again, thank you for joining us. Y'all hear about the Mississippi senator wanting to bring back public hanging? I did. She won too. She won. So how do, when we have organizations like this, how do we deal with informants, or how do we prevent informants joining, if there's any such a thing, as far as keeping them from getting involved in the actual organizations?
Well, I mean, so let me just say, professionally, right, I work in risk management, right? So there's three ways that you can deal with risk. You can share it, meaning get some type of insurance policy. You can mitigate it, meaning put some type of controls in place to try to prevent it, or at least lower the impact. Or you can just accept it. This is a natural cause of doing business. So this risk is basically inherent in what we do. So with that being said, if you are organizing for the unification of African people all over this globe, there are a lot of people with deeply entrenched interests, economic and otherwise, into keeping things the way that they are, right? So that type of vision is a threat to what they would desire to have. So with that being said, they're going to use their intelligent apparatus to really try to quell what it is you're doing with your organization. That involves infiltrating, that involves, setting you up, demonizing you, character assassination, anything that they can do to basically stop the forward movement of the organization. So that, comes with the terrain, when you step into this arena and you say that I'm going to try to do something on behalf of Black people globally. So with that being said, there are circles within circles. There are secret societies. There are all types of ways that you can try to mitigate the risk of being infiltrated. But at the end of the day, I think the best measure to assess people is by having some type of code of operation that everybody is adhering to. And when you see people breaking from that code, I guess in their actions or in their behavior, it can kind of single them out, and then you can isolate them and eliminate them from the group.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, we're always going to get some type of infiltration. That's inherent in what we do.
Shout out to Daniel for the super chat. Thank you so much, bro. Let's see what else we got here in the chat room. So what's now, as far as connecting back to the continent, you have some people that would say that it's a waste of time, or that fundamentally Black Americans, we've become our own tribe. What are your thoughts on statements like that?
I think that is it's very short-sighted, and I think that many Black Americans are vested in Black Americanness for the simple fact that we are comfortable standing next to white American power. There's some benefits to being under this umbrella that we don't necessarily want to give up. But I say that it's short-sighted because it requires a belief that things as they exist today within this country will continue to exist into the future, meaning like this country will remain stable. It'll remain the #1 world power on the economic stage. And I think that when you examine politics and historical trends, we can see the decline of the American empire. And you have to ask yourself, where is that going to leave Black people if we haven't formed ourselves into a nation or into a body politic when this society as it currently exists falls? So that would be my first response. But then my second response, I would just draw from Garvey and say that until Africa is redeemed, African people everywhere will continue to suffer under the brutality of those nations who currently control and dictate the affairs of Africa. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do all that is in our power, especially those that are in the diaspora, to ensure that Africa is redeemed, if not in our generation, then in the next.
What about the idea of having our own nation state?
Meaning on the continent or here in the U.S.?
I would say on the continent.
So I'm actually for that idea, but I think that in order for that to work, it will require the dismantling of the colonial states that currently exist on the continent. So if I use an analogy, right, I look at, those of us who were enslaved in the diaspora, or the descendants of those who were enslaved or held captive in the diaspora. I look at us as like prisoners of war.
Right.
But when I look to the continent, I look at like our family and our cousins on the continent as like orphans of war, right? Because you have to understand what the colonization process was like. It required a significant killing off of the adult population, specifically the adult male population, and then socializing the woman and the children into the ways of Europe. So in that colonization process, many African people became orphans to Africa and became wards or children of Europe, right? So they gave up their African traditions, their African spirituality, their African names, their African culture. Some of them still have, you still see some figments of African culture within, some African spaces, but for the most part, African culture or Black people in Africa are denigrated in favor of all things European.
See what else we got here in the chat room. Everyone, thank you for joining us. How do you feel about the, I guess, the process of going through ancestry.com or, African ancestry and finding out which tribe or where you come from? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think that it really has much, I guess, bearing or significance. For me, I guess I'm fortunate in a sense that my family, we were able to do our genealogy and actually trace back at least to the port that we came from, on the continent.
Go into detail on that. How are you able to do that?
Okay, so my family, I currently live in Philly, but we got here by way of the Great Migration. But the large majority of my family on the East Coast is down in what they were referred to as Gullah land. So right outside of Savannah, Georgia.
Gullah Geechee.
Yeah. So
the people of the Gullah Geechee, do they come from like Nigeria or like what's their?
So my family largely came from Sierra Leone.
Okay.
So they during enslavement here in America, they worked on rice plantations. But that's a skill set that many people in that region of West Africa had. So what you had occur, you had what they referred to as profiteers or enterprising plantation owners who would actually charter their own ships, go over to the continent, make a deal with one of what they were referred to as like the warring tribes, and would capture an entire village and bring that village over in whole and enslave them on these plantations down in Gullah land. So as a result of that, many of the traditions and much of the culture remained intact. And there's a lot of rich records, if you come from that particular region, that you can use to trace your family back. So my family arrived here in 1784. So that's where I can trace back to.
Oh wow, that's was it a pretty tough process or?
I didn't do the work. And I wouldn't mind sharing the document with you, but I had a cousin who since passed away. He served as like the family historian, and he went through and did all the work and compiled a document of the tree that's very intense, that ties it all the way back. So it was great work that was done.
Okay. See what we got here in the chat. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Make sure you hit that like button as you come into the chat. Now, is your name Yoruba? That's what people are asking.
Yeah, the name that I adopted, Omowale, is a name that is Yoruba in origin.
Okay. Yeah. So somebody also put in the chat room, Omowale, the child that returned home, was also given a Malcolm X when he went to Nigeria. You brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's see here. What? Someone's asking in the chat room. What are your thoughts of the Republic of New Africa? Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah. I'm familiar with that. I support those brothers because I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you know, the blood and bones of our ancestors are here, on this land in this soil. So we have just as much claim to the soil as anyone else. But I recognize that we are connected to the African body all over this world, and I'm not necessarily concerned with obtaining 5 states, although I support their claim and their mission to do it. I read what they refer to as the Marshall Plan, and I think that it's very thorough. But ultimately, what I'm looking to achieve or obtain is similar to that which Garvey wanted to achieve or obtain, which is the redemption of Africa and the development of a nation on the continent that is capable of protecting the interests of African people everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Garvey used to say that a strong man is strong anywhere. Right? So back in the day, they used to say that you don't stand a Chinaman's chance. But that's because that's when China was under colonial control. So Chinese people were catching hell all over this earth,
Right.
getting smacked up and treated like chumps or whatever. But once they regained their nationality, you don't see that today. So I think it'll be the same thing for us. I just think that we have to believe that it can be done and stop being so afraid to do something about the current situation.
So why do you think a lot of us are so afraid to do something about the current situation?
Because the fear is bred into us. For example, I saw the brother from London, the Igbo brother.
Okay.
Got into my mentions was I guess he was frustrated with you about your dialogue when you were doing the haggling for the mask.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain to him that you were being facetious, but I want to use the Igbo people as an analogy right now for like the.
Yeah, but the thing is, this is the issue I have with the Igbos.
Mm-hmm.
Now they'll get mad at me for just relaying the information that I'm getting from them, but they won't go check their own elders.
Well,
that's just my honest opinion.
The thing about the Igbo, and so I did a lecture earlier this year called Nigerianism on Trial. Mm-hmm. And in doing that lecture, first of all, many of us are of Igbo descent here in the West, and I can kind of break that down for you at some other point. But I did a significant study on Nigerian culture and the history of Nigeria, and an interesting fact is, if you just study, a few books about Nigeria, about its history, you'll know more about Nigeria than 90% of the population.
True.
Because history in Nigeria has been removed from their public school system since 1982. So many people currently living in Nigeria don't know anything about the history or about, how it was developed or even what amalgamation means. So I did a lecture called Nigerianism on Trial. But when you study the Igbos, the reason why the Igbos are hated by most of the what I would refer to as the major tribes in Nigeria, like the House of Fulani or the Yoruba, is because a lot of the other tribes look at the Igbos through the eyes of the Europeans. And what I mean by that is Du Bois used to have a saying called double consciousness, and it essentially means viewing yourself through the eyes of your oppressor. Mm-hmm. Right? So the same thing works when you're looking at your brothers and sisters through white people's eyes. So the Igbo nation, the Western Igbos, they actually, and I want you to Google this, it's called the Ikumeku resistance movement against British invasion. The Ikumeku actually inspired the Mau Mau, right? The Mau Mau in Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta.
Hold on. What's his name?
What was that? Yes. So the Mau Mau movement in Kenya was inspired and influenced by the Ikumeku movement in Nigeria.
Now, hold on 1 second. Guys, hit the like button, please. Get those likes up. Please hit the like button as you come in. Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so this movement, also known as the Ikuku movement, which means like the whirlwind, was a resistance movement of Igbo people who resisted colonialism all the way up until 1914, right, when they finally lost the war. But these dudes was bad, right? They basically kill all white people, kill all Christian missionaries. Anybody you see come and kill anybody from the Royal Niger Company, kill them. That was their mentality, and they fought this. The Igbo.
So how did they turn into the white Christian Jesus?
I'm going to explain to you exactly how it occurred. So they fought this war, one of the longest resistance wars on the continent to British or European colonialism. And in 1914, they finally lost the war, right, through the sheer force and they had the machine gun, right? The machine gun was created in 1885, the same year as the Berlin Conference. When they killed off all of the warriors and imprisoned all of the leaders of that movement, the only thing that was left were orphans, meaning orphan children and women. So essentially, the missionaries were able to come in and fully socialize this army of children into Christendom, which is why the Igbos essentially went from being the fiercest resistors to European colonialism to the people who were most incorporated into the system. So today, that I guess that heritage, many Igbo people don't even know about. They don't understand that they fought harder than anybody else to resist it. But that's just like, say, like if me and you, I don't know if you have children. I got 3 kids.
Well, I got 1. I got a son.
Okay, so say if me and you get killed off, and then some white Christian missionaries come raise up our kids, right? My youngest is 5 months. My oldest is 13 years old. What do you think they're going to raise our kids to be like?
Right.
So this is what you have. You have generation after generation that have been raised by those children who were raised by the missionaries. So that's why, things are like the way that they are. But I want you to understand, I have a paper here. You can check it out. It's called the Role of Indigenous Collaborators During the Anglo-Ikumeku War. And the reality is, like the Obo from Benin, once he got disposed, his son went down on a peace mission to talk to the Ikumeku people to say, hey, listen, y'all need to just barter and do a treaty with these Europeans. But the reality is he was there to set them up and betray the movement. So there were a lot of collaborators. And his reason for collaborating was he basically believed that the Europeans were invincible. There was nothing we could do to defeat them, so we need to listen and serve them, right? So this is the mentality of many other people on the African continent. They really fear white people and look to white people as almost like their gods.
Wow. Let's see what else we got. So then, how did the white Jesus, white Jews, how did that come about?
Through Christianity, the same way that we became Hebrew Israelites. We start reading that Bible, and we say, wow, well, these people in the Bible kind of like got a similar story to us. They were slaves, we slaves. They were in Egypt. We in America, yada yada yada, and all of a sudden, you become those people. You just completely adopt it and say, you know what? The same way we became Aboriginal Indians. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
You can attach yourself to any story once you've been detached from your own. So that's how we became those things.
So how do we break this spell?
Brother, it requires, those of us who have political clarity, those of us who have spiritual clarity, we have to serve as almost like missionaries, going back to our people and baptizing them so that they can be born again Africans. I'm being facetious, like I'm not into baptizing nobody, but I mean, our people really have, our culture and our ancestors have been so demonized that our people believe some fanciful things about our ancestors. They believe that we were blood drinkers and demon worshippers and children eaters. Like they believe some crazy things, and they don't know no better because this is what's been told to them generation after generation. So, I'm of the belief that total African liberation will not be possible without a return to African spirituality.
Right.
And in order for our people to return to African spirituality, you have to demystify it. You have to do some significant re-education or reorientation against a lot of the propaganda. Like, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. You ever heard someone use the term mumbo jumbo?
Yeah.
All right, so we use it every day probably in America to say somebody's talking nonsense.
Right.
Well, mumbo jumbo is a term that the Europeans created that was based upon an African deity that was served by the Mandinka people, right? So it was their way of denigrating an African deity. So the same way that they denigrate voodoo, which means, the spirit. They've denigrated the word so much that we're scared to go anywhere near it because we've been, propagandized against our own interests. So those of us who know, we have a responsibility to go back and teach. And that's the work that we're looking to do through Afrocentricity International, but also more importantly, through the African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Fund.
Let's see what you got in chat room, everybody. Let's see what we got here. I bet you it's freezing out there in Philadelphia now.
It definitely is.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can't do it.
It definitely is.
Now, the organization, about how many members do you guys have? Like, how's the reception been?
Okay, so we are not a mass-based organization, but we are a mass network, if that makes sense.
Okay. Now, go into details.
So what I mean by a mass network is we are a network of chapter organizations that, like I said, is on every continent with the exception of Alaska. We have a greater footprint outside of the U.S., but I'm actually working pretty diligently now to try to build up our footprint locally, or I guess nationally. Because you have to understand, right, when it comes to organizing people, you don't organize people. The conditions do, right? The atmosphere does, right? If it's raining outside, then you seek shelter, right? So in this current environment, it's raining and Black people are seeking shelter. The organization that we have is that shelter to bring people in, to re-socialize them, to direct them so that we can all be moving in the same direction. And the importance of being a part of a global organization is that we haven't had such an organization since Marcus Garvey, UNIA, that coordinates the efforts of African people across languages, across continents, across tribes, for one particular reason, which is the liberation, the total liberation of African people everywhere. We haven't had that since Garvey, and we have that now with the Afrocentricity International.
Now, are young people catching on at all, or are they just pretty much stuck on it?
You know what's funny? I think that we're starting to attract a lot more young people, and surprisingly, a lot of young people from the continent, right? I have people from the continent who are here studying in places like Canada, studying in America, and they reach out to me because some of the things that I say, some of the information that I share, like they've never heard of it before, right? And it opens their eyes and allows them to put in context the situation that they just left behind on the continent. Like, you have to realize that, I don't know if you know this, but during the African independence struggle, every African leader, with the exception of maybe one or two, came to America to study, right?
Are you familiar with the AAI? African American Institute? Yeah.
The African American? No, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, so basically they pretty much train future African leaders, and the organization is based here in either New York or DC.
Then that mean they're the feds.
Okay, well, they're
because so what's happening right now, brother, and I think that we all need to be aware of this, is that on the African continent, I think the average age right now is 18 years old, and 60% of the population this might be Nigeria specifically, but 60% of the population is under the age of 25. So as a result, we have a lot of federal and national institutions operating at the grassroots level to try to pull in the youth to basically incorporate them into Western imperialism, right? Barack Obama has an organization that he started called YALI,
Right.
which is Young African Leadership Initiatives. And the goal of that organization is really to create 1 million Barack Obamas,
Right.
people that are going to serve the interests of white supremacy on the African continent, right? So, and it's easy to attract people who are in a destitute situation. I mean, this is how a lot of our people converted to Christianity. Like, once I destroy your culture, once I destroy your social customs and your economy, you can't eat unless I feed you. But I'm not going to feed you unless you convert, right? So that's what's happening right now. And you got African people everywhere willing to sell out other African people just for their own survival.
That's sad. That's really that's really sad. Now, somebody in the chat room says we need to stop talking. We have leadership issues.
I don't know what they mean by leadership issues.
I mean, just in general, as far as on the continent, just Black people in general, we have leadership issues. What are your thoughts on the lack of proper leadership that we're having?
Well, if they're referring to like, I guess, political leadership on the continent, like the presidents and things like that, I think that those folks are doing what they were put in place to do. You know what I mean? I always tell people that when they colonized the continent, they didn't colonize countries, right? They colonized people, and they created countries to facilitate the colonization process, right? So when the Europeans left the continent, those countries that they created stayed in place, and they trained a class of leaders to step up and be the overseers of the plantation, so to speak. That dynamic has not changed to date, which is why I say that in order for us to develop a true nation state on the continent that is capable of protecting the interests of African people everywhere, you have to dismantle the colonial state, because that is the last vestige of European colonialism. You know, that state is in place to facilitate theft, right? You know, it's not in place to serve the interests of the people. However, at the grassroots level, everywhere, there, like, for instance, you wouldn't know that at the grassroots level here in America, there was significant leadership. And the reason why that is because the leadership that the system props up is LGBTQ leadership, it's intersectional Black feminist leadership, it's Black liberal leadership. So that's always going to be the case, but there are real leaders on the grassroots level. But you need a grassroots organization that can connect them, that can educate them, politicize their community, and give them directive in terms of how to march.
But, you know, I'm starting to notice a lot of African immigrants are turning into pretty much white liberals, and they're more concerned about American identity politics versus what's going on in their own country. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I would agree with you 100%. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily. What I would say is that is applicable to any Black population anywhere, right? Even within the Black American, so to speak. I don't necessarily use that term, but even within that population, you have Black people who are, Black Europeans that are serving the interests of
Negropeans, Afripeans. I call them Afripeans.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So I don't think that that's a and you also have to realize who's getting over here. Like they have a thorough vetting process to see who's getting over here. So if you're getting over here, chances are you go along with the program. And mind you, a lot of people on the continent already go along with the program.
Right.
It's not that hard. I understand it.
Yes, sir. Let's see what else we got here in the chat room. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We're trying to shift subjects a little bit. What's the importance of having our own Black media?
Oh man, it's incredibly important. That's why, first of all, I just want to take my hat off to you and everybody else who is on Black YouTube that have built an audience so that people can speak to Black people. Because without y'all, I mean, I think the Black Authority does it all the time. Like he's always beating up on the traditional or the old guard Black media, and I'm glad that they are fading away.
But Mark Lamont Hill got fired today.
I saw that. I'm gonna hold my peace on the Mark Lamont Hill situation, but I did see that. But man, Black media, a voice to reach and talk to and politicize and have direct interaction with Black people is incredibly important. And the fact that you guys are able to do this independently, I just give hats off to you. What I would like to see y'all do,
go ahead,
in the spirit of unity and in the spirit of nation building, is all of you guys who have these big platforms, man, form some type of like conglomerate.
Too many egos, bro. I'm down, but it's too many egos, man.
We gotta get the egos out the way, because remember when I told you need an organization that can re-socialize people so that we have a code of operation. So that way, when you see people operating outside of the code, right, then you can easily isolate and eliminate them, because why? They're operating as individuals and they're operating against the interests of the collective. That's simple. You got to start nipping people in the butt. If they don't want to be held accountable, if they don't want to get down and work together as a team, and they just want to be individuals, then we got to get them out the way. Don't support them.
Yeah, that's the thing. We have too many, just too many individuals. I think that's just the main issue. I'm down to work with damn near everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you can't call yourself a Pan-African if you're not, right? Because it means all, right? So you try to work with all African people, hopefully for a purpose, right? For an economic purpose, for a political purpose, for a liberatory purpose, right? So I think that that's important.
Someone in the chat room said Afro-Latinos are African people too. Yes, we know. And then African People's Socialist Party 7th Congress Day. Are you familiar with that organization?
I'm familiar with the African People's Socialist Party. I don't, I speak out quite frequently against socialism.
Okay, so socialism versus capitalism. What's your thoughts?
I think that they are both European modes of economic allocation that only serve the interests of European people. I think that we need to have a fundamental paradigm shift or transformation in the way that we understand economy and the way that we understand commerce. Because right now, and I think that we are only able to understand it through this European binary, and the trick and us being trapped in that either I'm a capitalist or a socialist is that both of those systems rely on the subjugation and domination of the African continent. Neither can exist without the other, right? So if you're truly for the liberation, of African people in the African continent, then you have to examine those systems to understand how they both work against us, right? That's not to say that a lot of us don't, I studied economics in school, so a lot of us don't understand that, there's a difference between commerce and capitalism. I'm for trade. I'm for business development. But capitalism, and I don't think I'll have time to like fully explain it, but I did a full debate on this subject with African Esquire, because she takes the socialist position, and I say no. Like, if we fully adopted socialism today, we'd still be dominated as African people, because that doesn't address the true problem, right? I'm not for addressing the spider web. I'm for addressing the spider. So
let's see what else we got here in the chat room. Let's see here. Yeah, I just think the media portion definitely needs to be built. Shout out to Blacksmith Financial. Blacksmith Financial channel coming January 2019. Get a new perspective on personal finance from a Black perspective. When we talk about it, we're kind of segueing into it, but when we speak on these organizations and groups, economics isn't really covered. What are your thoughts on that?
Like, if you're not covering it, like economics. So first of all, with Afrocentricity International, economics is one of our core uh, pillars. But anything that you do that's serious about liberating Black people has to have an economic component. For example, right, with the African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Fund, and you can read about the fund and you can read about our approach at Reclaimyourheritage.fund. But we deal in three key areas of people activity, right? Economics, education, and religion, right? So from the economic perspective, the goal is to create a self-sustaining, self-supporting community that can free itself from foreign aid, right? Because you can't build anything economically from a position of dependency. You have to build it from a position of strength. So there's two things we want to do in that regard. One is we want to give significant education, and there's already a model in place. In Benin right now, there's an institution.
Benin Republic or Benin City?
Benin Republic.
Okay.
There's a place called the Songhai Center. You can Google it. It's Songhai Center. It's spelled the European way, CENTRE. They've already developed a self-sustaining agricultural model that educates, that provides for an entire community, and supports entrepreneurship. The challenge with that is it isn't addressing the spiritual component. It's run by a Black guy, albeit, but I believe he's a father, like he's Catholic. So he's propagating, Catholicism, and that kind of like needs to be uprooted. But that's the first approach. But the second approach that we're taking with economics, on the continent, a lot of NGOs are using what they refer to as microfinance. So they're giving very small incremental loans to people in the marketplace to facilitate small business growth and development in the community. But the challenge with the NGOs is they have an agenda. One of their main agendas is to decrease the population on the African continent, right? So when they give their loans, A, they only give them to African women, right? And B, they encourage these women to take education on childhood prevention. You know what I mean? With us, we want to give microfinance, but we want to target the family because we believe that a family unit needs to be intact for a community to thrive. So you have two arms of economics, one which is agriculture, the other which is microfinance to help develop the community. But the most important component of any economic system is relationships, right? Because economics is all about how we relate to one another. And right now, African people relate to one another in a way that is detrimental towards our collective uplift because
tribalism.
Exactly. We see one another through European eyes.
Right.
So the education component is important in instilling race consciousness or cultural consciousness and self-love into our people so that we can network and build together.
So somebody in the chat room is already on the we were already here in America propagation propaganda. I'm sorry. What are you what are your thoughts on the we kind of covered that with the Igbos and the Christianity, and we used the white Jews. What are your thoughts about Black people who are like, look, we are already here in America, we are indigenous to this land, and you're wasting your time by claiming to be African?
Yeah, I did a segment on this. I started using YouTube earlier this year just because I saw the proliferation of that type of idea being put out there and spreading like wildfire. So I did two things on this. I did something called the falsification of Aboriginal consciousness. And then I did a segment called Losing the Battle to Ignorance. It was called the Dane Calloway Cheat Code. And essentially, we have a significant literacy problem in our community right now. Like in Philadelphia, I think it's something like 25% of the population can barely read. And if you isolate black men, it goes up to
Hey, we can't in Philadelphia. What?
like 25% of the black population there can't read.
Are you serious?
I'm very serious. We have a significant literacy problem, and nobody's going to tell you that they can't read.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we learn that in an organization. For instance, if we have like a group activity, we now know not to pass around reading material because, you know, and then ask people to read, because you'll find out really quick, like, damn, like our people can't read. You know what I mean? So we have a significant literacy problem, and many of us are getting information from YouTube that is not vetted information. So like when you don't really, you know, any ideas will fly when you don't necessarily have the proper background understanding or education to challenge the idea. But I don't want to really deal with the whole we were here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Before that, yeah.
That's fine. Let's see what else we got here in the chat room. Everyone, again, thank you for joining. Please hit that like button. All right, Ash, shout out to Tanisha Johnson. Guys, hit that like button as you enter the chat, please. That's all I ask for. Just hit the like button. Just hit the like button. I greatly appreciate it. Let's see here. Yeah, they can stay in America and fight for the land. There you go. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, what's the, okay, here we go. This is somewhat of a loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the future for Black America?
Future for Black America. Wow. Well, I think the future for Black America is tied into the future for America as a whole.
Okay.
And you know, when they say that, you know, when white America has a cold, Black America has the
fever, Ebola.
Yeah. Well, right now, globally, you know, Brother George Macon, peace, my brother. Globally, right now, there is an economic adjustment that is occurring, and white people, you see this anytime white people start getting economic anxiety,
right?
They start pulling together real tight, and they get real white nationalistic and get real aggressive because they see the writing on the wall. And the thing is, white people haven't lost their survival instinct, so they know to pull together and start othering other people in order for their survival, right? Because what's occurring right now is the global economy is really transitioning away from, you know, what we refer to as modern industrialization, where we have skilled labor who works in the factories producing the goods that we consume, to an automated economy and an economy based upon artificial intelligence and cybernetic creations. This is creating a reality where you know, the future doesn't look too bright in terms of job creation. Right? Because businesses won't have much incentive to hire when they can use automation or they can use artificial intelligent beings to create the things they need to create. So what America is doing right now is they're floating this idea of universal basic income. And the concept is basically, hey, there ain't no job, so we're just gonna give you a check to survive on.
Right.
For me, that's slavery. And we know that due to America's racism, they ain't never going to take care of Black people. So I think you can take the Yvette Carnell approach or the Tone Talks approach, and you can try to beg you know, the establishment to recognize you and to love you and to feed you. Or you can take the Garvey approach and understand that we have to come together as a collective. We have to practice collective economics. We have to claim our space on the land. We have to be serious about our survival. Because if we aren't serious about our survival, we're going to die as individuals. But we do stand a chance to survive if we operate as a collective.
What are your thoughts on the Yvette Carnell approach? The Black folks ain't got no money.
I think it's that's you know, I think that is a true statement in some regards, but I understand a lot of.
And I was about to do my Yvette Carnell impersonation, but I'm gonna be mature.
Yeah, I think that these folks, I love to read W.E.B. Du Bois for this reason, you know, because you get a chance to see Du Bois from 1903 to 1963 go through several stages of evolution in his political thought. And at one point, he was where Yvette Carnell is at today, until the Great Depression came and he started sounding like Booker T. Washington.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that, they would do well to study and examine history. And once they did that, they could rule out some of the solutions that they are proposing, because they will see that historically they have never worked. And once they rule out the nonsense, then they can get serious about what really needs to be done politically and economically for Black people. And when I talk politics, I don't refer to electoral politics, right? Malcolm used to say that we are politically immature. And I think that it's in a politically immature point of view to only view politics as voting. When I talk about politics, I'm talking about group activity for the purpose of achieving power. That's politics. So everything that I do is political, because everything that I do is aiming at achieving power for the group.
Yeah, I've been having issues with my damn mouse lately. I don't know why. It just keeps losing connection. So my keyboard went out.
It was made in China, bro.
My mouse went out.
You heard me?
What'd you say?
Your mouse was made in China. Nah, I'm just fucking with you.
No, it is. It's simple in China. You're absolutely right. So let's see where the keyboard's made.
Yeah.
In China, you're absolutely right.
The Chinese are not stupid. They want to make sure the life on them products go quick, so you can re-up.
I've only had it for like a year. A little over a year. Goodness. Yeah, brother. But what we'll do, we'll go ahead and close out. Thank you for coming on. What would you like to share with us in closing?
Hey, listen, I just want the people to know that we just launched the African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Fund. You can go to the site to learn all about it. It's Reclaimyourheritage.fund.
And the thing is, I would put the site in the chat room, but my mouse and my keyboard don't work.
I'll drop it in the chat room for you. That's no problem.
Try to drop it in, because the thing is, I might have to mod you in order for you to, and I can't mod you because my mouse and keyboard doesn't work. So try and drop it in and see if it lets you.
All right, I just dropped it in, but it didn't come up as a site. But
okay, well, there you go. Okay,
that's it right there. But basically, we are within the first 100 days of the campaign. Right now, we are looking for 1,000 visionaries who understand the vision of the fund to basically donate $100 within the first 100 days. So again, we're looking for 1,000 visionaries who understand the vision of the fund to donate $100 within the first 100 days. The goal of the fund, the African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Fund, is really to preserve and re-energize African spirituality. Our mission is to create a global network of liberated communities that are self-sustaining, where African spirituality is revered and openly practiced. We just purchased our first plot of land in Ivory Coast.
Where in Ivory Coast?
Abidjan.
Yeah. But how far outside of Abidjan, or is it in?
I haven't been there to visit yet. But we have a chapter in Abidjan, and we're having our conference there this year. Last year, our conference was in Benin. In 2016, our conference was in Haiti.
Did you go to the one in Benin?
I did not. I was in the UNIA last year. I was the president of the UNIA, so I just started working with them.
Why did you leave the UNIA?
Political reasons. First of all, one thing I learned that as a Garveyite is you never talk bad about the Great Association. So I won't talk bad about the association, but I'll just say that right now for political.
Do you know Julius Garvey? Is that his name?
I did. You're talking about Garvey's son. I don't know him, but I know who he is.
Okay. Is he involved at all, or?
He may be involved somewhat in Jamaica. One thing you'll learn about the UNIA if you ever become a member is there have been significant splits.
Got you. Okay, makes sense.
So there's it gets kind of crazy.
Okay.
It gets kind of crazy.
I can see that happening.
But yeah, just the last point. I really want us to
yeah, take your time, bro. Take your time.
No, so in terms of the African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Fund, like I said, our goal is to build a global network of liberated communities. And to this end, we have a vehicle called the African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Institute. Right now on the African continent, the Chinese have funded 48 Confucius institutes all over the continent for the purpose of promoting Chinese culture and Chinese language. The Chinese have built the African Union headquarters, the Economic Community of West African States. They paid $32 million for their headquarters. So the Chinese are building institutions all over the continent to make sure that they have influence and that Chinese culture is being propagated, right? Even in South Africa, they just
well, I can tell you the issue is we don't find value in it.
so
we don't find value in it. You want to be Christian and Muslim.
The point I'm trying to argue is that there are no institutions on the African continent that are in place to preserve African culture or promote the interests of African people. The African Heritage and Cultural Preservation Institute will be such an institution, and we've already broke ground in Ivory Coast. We've already erected two structures on the land, and we're looking to build another significantly larger structure, which is going to cost us roughly about $250K. So please do go to the fund. It's Reclaimyourheritage.fund. And if you support our vision, which is the liberation of African people, then we encourage you to be a visionary and be one of those 1,000 people that donate $100 to the fund in the first 100 days. You can donate as little as $5 though. You can even do recurring donations. If you want to do $10 a month for the next 10 months. If you want to do more than that, you can do as much as you like, but we truly do need your support. And I want to thank the brother, our brother Dinas Amir. I'm a big supporter of your work, of your mission, and of your vision. And I hope that we can work together and collaborate to help do this work for our people.
I appreciate it. No problem. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Omowale. Sorry about the difficulties. My brother Ben X. What's up, family? Thank you. Brother Ben X is in the house. Shout out to Brother Ben X.
Brother Ben X.
Yeah, family. But everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you go to search for Uhuru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure you go to reclaimyourheritage.fund. No.
Reclaimyourheritage.fund.
Oh, .fund. Okay. That must be a new extension.
Reclaimyourheritage.fund. I'm on YouTube at Omowale Africa. You can follow me on YouTube. I'm on Twitter at Omowale Africa. Definitely follow, support. The fund on Twitter is AHCP_fund. Please donate, follow, support. We need all of us to get this done. And peace again to Brother Ben X and Brother George Macon and everybody else in the chat room.
Absolutely, brother. Everyone, till next time, Dynasty Mirror, search for Uhuru. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until next time, family, I'll be back on tomorrow. I got a couple of shows for you guys lined up tomorrow. Peace.
You closed it off?